Guys, welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. Today we have a legend with us. Nick Gray is his name. He's a founder of Museum Hack, which I really much enjoy. I really love that company. And he's a best-selling author. I've started his books, really well written and cool illustrations. Nick, and explain it like I'm five, like we were talking pre-call. Welcome to the pod, Nick. Just tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're into nowadays.
I'm obsessed right now with live events and with convincing entrepreneurs that they should be hosting live events to grow their business. That most CEOs or founders, we have networks. Maybe you host a mastermind or a dinner, but thinking about how to build your network of acquaintances, that's what I'm passionate about.
So how would you convince a guy like me that's always lived his life virtually? I have my pod, which I use as a front end to meet nice people like you. And then my second level of trust is an online mastermind, which I might bring physically. So I might hit the party back then. But how would you convince a difficult person like me, kind of millennial almost, to host its own parties?
I would say that the reason that these events are successful is because the value that you add to the attendees. And so where you are, so let me just ask you, where you live, I know that you split your time between the two areas. Do you hang out in real life with anybody, or are you mostly in front of the screen?
Almost not. So I'm in Oaxaca, Mexico right now. In Mexico, it's really family culture. So we hang out with the family. I hang out with wifey a lot on weekends. When I'm in Canada, I try to hang out with my friends. And I started, oddly enough, because there's more and more people going to Oaxaca. I've seen that it's quite interesting from a tourism perspective. But I've started meeting folks physically this year at my favorite restaurant places. One was 2 months ago, and then I'm meeting another guy in 1 month.
How are you meeting them? You're just seeing that it's like foreigners that are in town?
It starts on the pod. So,
okay.
And yeah, it's odd, right? I never thought people would actually visit at this space that is Oaxaca, which talks a lot. But yeah, then I invite them to my favorite restaurants. And we talk and we have a lot of fun, basically.
Cool. Well, my suggestion for somebody like you is that even if you're spending 6 months in that town, know that the in-person relationships are so valuable. And even building a network of acquaintances. Maybe you say, look, I'm not going to meet the level of entrepreneurs in Oaxaca, the same level that I meet on my podcast. And yet you being known at your restaurant, at your local barbershop, at your local places, what if you were a bit of a local town celebrity and you weren't just some guy who spends all day on his computer? That my thought is that your life in Oaxaca might be different if you were recognized and welcomed and appreciated and seen as a local connector. You're already doing that online, and you're doing a great job of using your podcast and the cold emails and all the stuff that you do to do that. But how could you extend that to your in-person life and lower your expectations? Don't think it's to meet CEOs and multimillionaires. It may just be just to know the neighbors, the people when you walk to your restaurant, you see them all the time and you say hello, but like you don't know anything.
Right. Couple of ideas your way. So Oaxaca, my plan is kind of, to build the house here and so that I can invite my friends to stay and chill. Oaxaca is kind of this spiritual capital of the world also, I must say. And they would come here to actually disconnect, kind of. That's one. Two, I think if I want to meet CEOs and founders, because I'm not sure if I want to meet local business people, I would go probably to Ciudad de Mexico. There's a lot of talent there in Guadalajara too. And I've tried last year to organize some, not last year, but during the pandemic, and maybe that's the reason why it failed, but a mastermind event on the coast here in Huatulco. And last thing I'll mention, because again, I'm asking for lots of advice here. I want to get my travel van and go through the US and stop at every city. And then I would organize these dope ass parties with CEOs and founders. So I'm also interested in that. So where should I start in that whole journey?
I'm so glad that you start. You asked where to start, and I would say start easy where you can be successful. Start now where you are in Oaxaca and think, what if you team up with your wife and say, hey, how can we get 15 to 22 people Let's literally think about the people. You go to a cafe there, like, do you go to a cafe at all?
Yep, various coffees here.
Okay, various cafes. Think about the staff, the employees, people that you see there. Think about the restaurant that you go to. Think about businesses that you support to get those small business owners. Basically, what you're going to say is, hey, look, my wife and I live here in Oaxaca. I want to be in touch with my community and I want to host an event. I'm meeting all these interesting people. It's very simple. We're just going to have some drinks, some chips, some guacamole. Please come over, blah, blah. So the reason for you to start there is that you need to learn the foundation and the fundamentals of running a fast-paced, well-run small event. I don't want you to practice when you get your van ready or when you go to Mexico City for that to be the first time. I want you to be able to go to Mexico City and with your eyes closed, you can run this, right? And so just practice where you're not like, oh, I'm nervous in Oaxaca. You won't be nervous, right? Just get people together.
Right. I love that. It's a typical startup advice, which I should know that start like startups almost on a daily basis. So good advice right there. I also think I need to make the distinction between business and social because there's so much value in having a local community. I'm not talking business here, but just being connected with people and chilling out, you know, like us CEOs, we need to chill the fuck out. You know, we need to have some times to ourselves and connect from the heart with people. What do you have to say about that?
I think you're exactly right. 19% of American men say they don't have a single close friend. And being a founder can be incredibly lonely. What I know is that if you host this with your wife there, and what if you guys did this every 6 weeks or every 3 months? People will start to invite you and your wife to local events, whether it's to their parties. You're probably being invited to this now, and maybe that's not important, but you will be surprised at the benefits, even amongst a friend community level, completely separate the CEOs. But think about it, you may want to be friends with someone who owns a local business. Maybe you're not going to have them as a guest on your podcast. Maybe you would, but maybe not. But you may want to know them. And that's the type of people that if you and your wife are hosting a dinner or something like that, it's just nice to have those local people that you can unplug a little bit into your local community. There's a woman who I worked with and who I helped. She read my book and she was a very successful online entrepreneur, just like you. And she said, look, I have spent all my time building my business online. In my town, I'm kind of a nobody. It's funny because she said, online, I'm a big deal. I have the biggest guests. I have all these things. I have all these connections. But in my town, nobody knows me, okay? And so she read my book and she hosted a couple events. She hosted these Wine Wednesdays, and it was for women. She said, now it may not seem like a big deal, but when I go to a PTA meeting, I'm a celebrity. She said, when I go to the grocery store, I get recognized and people say hello to me. Now, maybe you don't want that, and that's fine. Some people are like, I don't want that. But I would just say that it does make life feel a little bit easier and more fun when you have more friends.
Yeah, I think short term I want that, but when I'll be a trillionaire, I don't think I'd want this. But no, it's super interesting. Maybe I have a trauma with networking events. You know, I started my career going there, whining and dining, and kind of taking control of conversation, the young sales lion that I was. And yeah, trying to do business. I never achieved $1 out of these conversations. I did that for a year, I think, but I learned about human nature and picking myself up and going somewhere where I didn't really want it to go. So what could I have done better starting my networking career?
I think that what you did at networking events is why people hate the networking events, right? And you probably said, just like yourself, a young sales lion, right? You were focused on what can I get out of this person? How can I push? How can I sell? And the whole purpose of selling these events, and not selling them, but just hosting the events, is you want to create the connections. And so what if you, Charles, could be the common thread amongst local business owners to connect them? Because the guy who owns the barbershop and the restaurant and the cafe, the reality is they don't know each other. They're busy in their business. They have hiring and challenges and local things. But you, as Charles, as this turbo super connector, you can zoom out and see everybody and make all these connections. And now they will see you as the super connector. And the funny thing is when somebody very interesting moves to town, they will say, oh my God, you have to meet Charles. He hosts these incredible events with his wife. You have to come. It's the best thing ever.
Right. Super connecting, I started doing that. I think the only challenge when it comes to super connecting is one, the habit of super connecting. So let's say that I finished this meeting to think about you. And the second is technology, to probably have you in a CRM somewhere and flag as, oh, I should pair this guy with this guy. Do you have any tips or tools to be a better super connector?
Yes. First tip and tool is you have to ask for the double opt-in introduction. You have to send me a message first and say, hey, I met this person. Would you like to be introduced to that person first? I can't tell you. That's my biggest pet peeve, is when somebody sends me an email. Hey, Nick, now you're connected with this person. That's the worst. And that shows that somebody doesn't know what they're doing. You have to get the double opt-in intro. Hey, Nick, I met this person. I think you might like them for these reasons. May I make an introduction to you? So that's my first best piece of advice for that.
I have more questions and another path that I want to take, because yeah, we might come back to the super connecting and party stuff. By the way, I feel the need to share that, you know, when I think about parties, I think about the party boy in Jackass. That was a part of my journey. And yeah, I'd probably pull out these weird stunts in my party, try to make some original and funny stuff happen while in there, while not being too broy. That defeats the
Please
whole
note, by
purpose.
the way, that even though we call these a cocktail party, it's not like a normal party. And in fact, in Mexico, it will be very different, because you'll say, what, I'm having a fiesta on a Monday? What, the fiesta has an end time? Because you have to have a start time and an end time, and after 2 hours. And in Mexican culture, I've heard that is very controversial. The idea that you will tell people to leave the party.
Yes.
That is very
100%. I mean, these parties, they just don't end. You know, the other day I was completing this 10-kilometer swim, and as I was waking up, the party was finishing at next door. You know, they finished at 5:30. So
what?
Yeah, they were not about to finish. You know, and yeah, I saw this cool event. I would have to give you the company. It's a mezcal company here in Oaxaca, and the party, and it started at 10 p.m. and it ended at 10 a.m. And yeah, it's like 12 hours of dancing and mezcal and crazy stuff. So, but the question I had for you, Nick, because I analyzed your background, and you started this interview saying, I'm obsessed, right? And when I look at Museum Hack, it's an amazing company, and it really rung like, oh, this guy is obsessed about every single detail of his customer's experience. I listened to your TED Talk and so forth. But it seems that you're bringing this obsession spice to everything that you touch. Why are you that way?
I think I spent a couple of years looking for the ideas that I'm obsessed with. And so my Museum Hack, this book about teaching people how to host meetups, I think of them as 5 or 10-year sectors. And I only want to work on the things that I truly love, that I'm obsessed with. And so with Museum Hack, you know, I did it for 2 years just as a hobby, for fun. It wasn't a business. It wasn't meant it. I did it for free. And the same thing now, I help people with their gatherings to host parties. I'll talk to you any time of the day if you want to call me. I will talk to you about hosting your event because I love it and I'm obsessed with it. And I think, how can I add the most value? So I know for Charles, you are such an amazing connector and business development person on the computer. And yet there's this life of you that you have in Oaxaca that's so family focused, that said, you know what, that side of me, having peers, having other people here in Oaxaca, that is not here. That's not for me. I'm not interested in doing that. But what if I told you, in the same time it takes you to watch a movie on Netflix, you could be building relationships and just having a network that you never know when that could help you out. And I promise you, my own network has helped me so much occasionally in these random moments.
Right. And I can see that focus on people, always adding value to others. That mindset of mine, I mean, I haven't acquired that mindset yet. I've always been a salesperson, but you seem to have that like really in your core DNA, which is super interesting in itself. And the museum, it's just odd, you know. I read the story behind Museum Hacks. You had a first date there, and then you became like hyper absorbed by that, which is a pattern that I see amongst hyper successful folks. But the question I had when looking at Museum Hacks, apart from the acquisition, which we'll get to in a couple of seconds, is how could you make the economics work? Because you charge such a low ticket price. It seems that you need to sell a whole bunch, but is there like sponsorship also? Do you have deals with the museums themselves? How did you make money with that one?
So for the museum tours, what we would do is they were basically break even, and we would hire people as freelancers to help us. But where we made our money was on the B2B sales, selling it to companies, big Fortune 500 companies, as a team building experience. And that is really where we made money, because that $59 tour, we could then sell to a business for $179, right? And we could sell many more tickets. So that's where we made money on Museum Hack.
Right. And initially, did the museums collaborated with you? Did they let you just be the tours? Because I think they have their own tour guides, right? So how did you go with that?
The museums were not exactly super excited about doing the tours at first. It was like a cat and mouse game, to be honest. And once we were bringing so many people to the museums, then we were paying them a lot of money for the full price admission. And because we could then say to them, hey, look, we're going to buy 100 museum tickets today, then there were things that we worked out. But I'll tell you the secret. Many museums have a program called the guest lecturer program, where college professors and foreign language tour guides can become authorized to go into the museum to talk to their clients and customers or students. And that is where we would go into the museums, through that back door, so to speak.
Love it. And yeah, to tell the audience a bit more about the experience, you made a bunch of jokes. You, for example, if the Wall Street guy walked in, you actually told him, oh, this is the most expensive piece right there, 35 mils. And I saw the video you made about that yellow sculpture using that weird stone that was like unpolishable almost. That was like so fascinating. Tell us a bit more about the other experience details while people walked in Museum Hacks.
Basically, our goal at Museum Hack was to attract millennials and young people to the museum. Gen Z, millennials, whatever you want to say. Art museums typically are very boring, and I wanted to make it interesting and exciting. And that is what Museum Hack was doing, was to find for them the stories. But what made it a successful business was I could grow and scale it by hiring stand-up comedians, Broadway actors, science teachers, people you don't think of being a tour guide. That's who I would hire.
And that's super cool. And then another, maybe life is meant to be that way, but some of your employees or your chief of staff offered to acquire you, which is something that is not usual. How did that happen?
They were way smarter than me, to be honest. The chief of staff and the marketing director, they were running the business. So this was my second, third, fourth business. I had already removed myself from the day-to-day operations, and they were running it. I think they had seen how I had peaked and taken the business as far as I could, and they had some ideas on how to grow it, but they also wanted a sense of ownership. So
Right.
That's how that worked out.
Right. And then I read some of your blogs when you got acquired. You were writing that you didn't have a job, and how did the book came about and the obsession with parties? So you were acquired, you had that money, and now you were chilling. Basically, you had friends, and then you had an idea to start a business with that one. Is that how it went?
That's sort of how it went for many years. I worked on this book for 6 years, and I was working on it even before I sold the company. It was a Google Doc that was passed around my friends of just the tips and tricks I learned from hosting hundreds of events in New York City. And when I sold the business, then I had more time and I had more money. And I said, okay, now I'm going to try to make this a book and share everything that I've learned on how to host a good event, because it helped me so much. Hosting these events helped me build this network that I launched Museum Hack with. And I think that was really key. And it truly is something that I'm trying to give back. I don't make a lot of money off of the book. It's the least profitable thing I've ever done in my life, but it brings me the most joy and most happiness because I see the changes it makes in people.
So how tedious was writing the book for 6 years? Did it naturally came about and it was just this Google Doc standing there, or did you had to actually force yourself to write, to edit, and eventually publish?
Yes, I had to force myself. I would not suggest anybody to do a book. It's terrible. It's stupid. It's a waste of time. Don't do it.
So you just do it for the value part of it, because a lot of people do it for the business card type of it. What's the finality to this? Like, do you have a master plan, or just like host party and teach people how to host parties?
My number one goal now is to get to 500 people. And I hope I can count you as one of the 500 that will be the first time host that'll read my book and host a party and be verified. So that means host a party, use name tags, use icebreakers, and get a group photo. And then you're a verified host. And my goal is to get to 500 verified hosts. At the end of those 500, I think I will have an idea of some sort of a business, maybe, where I can add massive value to people. But at the moment, the most value I can add is just to help people to host their party right now. And that's what I'm focused on.
Love it. You're very much a proponent of building in public. What are the pros and cons of building in public? How's that played out for you so far?
I think there's other people that are building SaaS companies in public that could speak more about it, but I do live my life in public. I share a lot on social media, and I've had a mixed relationship with that. But I've learned from many years of sharing things online. I'm experimenting with video now. And I would just say, let me just think. Some of the most successful, wealthiest entrepreneurs that I know do not share anything online. And you probably know people like this. They are undercover and they're not out there trying to share. So I would say, be careful who you listen to online. I don't know if people should listen to me.
Right. Nick, thank you for the interview today. Where can people find out more about you and your book?
The name of my book is The 2-Hour Cocktail Party. It's online. I'll include some links in the show notes about how to host a networking event, even how to host a housewarming party. And in case you're interested, I also recorded the audiobook. And so you can find that on Audible and Spotify and places like that.